I want to talk to you about crafting this work-life balance and trying to create harmony mentally with the demands to manage the home and the family and all those other things. We all know as mothers and as busy women that when we get bogged down and people need heaps from us, and we feel like we've got heaps of demands coming our way, the first thing that slips is our mental and physical wellness habits. It's the last thing on the list that gets prioritized. But the problem is that the cup depletes pretty quickly, and then we change as people. We can get really frustrated, agitated, and we can feel really let down within ourselves. Today, what I'm going to be talking about is a compounding effect, which is when you start out and you're trying to create habits, it's really hard because you've lived a certain way for a really long time and you're trying to change your entire way of being. It uses a huge amount of energy to change habits, to create a new routine, because you're trying to reprogram your brain. And so we've got to make sure that whatever the habits are and where we're putting them, that are ideal for that location, ideal for our energy, and ideal for our routine. So we don't feel like we're constantly fighting this battle where we're pushing up against something and we're just not getting the results that we want. Now, we all understand the power of compounding when it comes to financial investments. People know that if you compound, you just add a little bit more and a little bit more, that the interest slowly, gradually increases on financial investments, right? But the same thing happens with our habits. As you become better and better at your routine, you become more structured with your time, you become more organized with your calendar and with your to-do lists and how you're structuring and fitting everything in, you can accomplish so much more. It does compound, it does get easier because you get better at habit stacking and you know the best position for that. And you've trialed enough time that you find what works for you. Today, we're going to be talking about how this compounding effect goes well beyond money, and that small, seemingly insignificant choices that we're making every single day can also compound over months and particularly over years to shape our lives in really profound ways. Habits can for worse, or they can compound for better. So what happens when we don't have this work-life balance and when we're not on top of these compounding habits? We start to procrastinate. A lot of these things that we're avoiding, the things that we fall back into, like the doom scrolling or avoiding the housework or eating sometimes can be a form of procrastination. Basically, they do it over other things that need to be done. It might be over work tasks that needs to be done. It could be over doing your meal planning. It could be overdoing your food prep. It could be overdoing your exercise, overdoing other things. So there's two forms of procrastination that come forward, women. There's like the procrastination in which they do the keep busy work, which is the easiest tasks that you can possibly complete, which is like shuffling things around the home or doing those sorts of things so that you feel like you're being productive. And then there's the other form of procrastination, which is where you need to complete a habit, but you're not doing it because it just seems like it's too much effort and it's not the right time and you feel frustrated by yourself. You're just putting it off, aren't you? So this lack of self-discipline is basically knowing that we know what we need to do, but we're not doing it in the moment. And this is why when we start to create a routine, we have to make sure that the habits are actually in a location which we're most likely to do it. You don't want to tell yourself that you're going to exercise at 7 o'clock at night when you're tired, it's been a long day, and you're expecting yourself to rock up for something that's really mentally grueling. You've got to make sure the location of that habit is relevant to what you're trying to create. You don't want to make it more difficult for yourself. You want to have a great flow, right? So what happens when we avoid these habits? This is a huge one. Women experience this negative self-talk and huge amounts of self-doubt. When we don't do the things that we need to do, the statements that people make to themselves can be so harsh. And then self-criticism and negative internal dialogue can come in. And so that's exactly what we're talking about to do, like creating a routine that actually allows us to flourish and get those things done so we don't feel like we're hitting a wall when we try and implement those things. And then what happens then, team? We feel like nobody supports us. But we feel like nobody's on our page. No one's here to help me. I'm doing this on my own. And there's that internal dialogue that comes from that as well, isn't there? So we feel like these family commitments and these responsibilities are conflicting with our personal health habits and with our routines. And so we feel like our support network is not on our side. And there's a real problem that comes from that because we feel resentment. And then we start to play that out in our relationships. So we can be quite terse. We can be frustrated. We haven't got as much empathy or as time for other people, and start to retract and start to isolate myself. When I feel like this is all too much and I can't get on top of this, and I start to just pull back and just think, oh, I'm just going to run my own ship, run away, live in a caravan, do something else. But we feel like our family members, our friends don't understand us or value the importance of what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to put into place. And we can feel like we're not working as a cohesive team. It can be really frustrating. This can cause huge family friction when you're trying to implement something and you feel like your partner's on board, or you're trying to make changes within the family unit and you're not getting enough support. This lack of encouragement or this lack of acknowledgement from our loved ones for our efforts towards our self-improvement can really make our self-esteem drop and make us feel disconnected, but also make us think, what's the point of me doing all this stuff if nobody's going to help me and I'm butting up against walls and it just seems so hard to implement? And also sometimes we have such high expectations of ourselves that when we're not meeting them, we like are letting ourselves down in that regard. And it can create this fear around, I'm never going to be able to sustain this. That just tells us our expectations are too high. But as I was saying at the beginning of the presentation, was the thing with habits is that they compound over time. And if you read the Atomic Habits books, it talks about the fact that you should only ever increase your habits by 4%. Now, the problem is that when you say 4%, your 4%, my 4%, Katie's 4%, Gemma's 4%, everybody's 4% is different, right? Because we're all in a different space. But if it's only a very small amount above where you're at currently, you don't want to try and like change and overhaul your whole life at once, because what'll happen is you just burn yourself out. And that's what happens with a lot of people when they enter something and they try and do everything perfectly from the beginning, is that they get to like week 3 or week 4 and week 5 and they're done. And they just want to hop out of, and they want to quit. That's part of the reason why acceleration goes for 14 weeks, because people predominantly go in hard. And then the rest of the time is like asking them to calm down and actually let's create something sustainable. And that's what we've got to do for yourself. So it's like when you have those weeks where like you have with your work and it's been totally hectic and you've been working massive for 16-hour days, then we have to go, okay, what does my lifestyle look and how can I manage my health around that? And a big thing that I'm always talking about in acceleration and through momentum are those core non-negotiable habits that keep my head above water. And that's what we revert back to. But knowing that they're enough, that if you continue to chip away at them, you'll continue to lead a healthy lifestyle, but you have to enjoy this thing, right? So whatever we create, you have to enjoy. And so that's what we want to do today. Make sure that we're creating something that you really enjoy. So what do we want to create? We want to get to this place where we've got this self-discipline that we can actually overcome this procrastination, that we actually enjoy what we're doing enough to continually rock up for it. And that's why we need to adjust our routine and we need to be flexible with these things and where they fit. And we need to like really consider what works for me. What do I enjoy? What do I keep coming back to? And what is it that I procrastinate on? What is it that I avoid? How can I approach that differently? Maybe it's the meal planning, for example, or maybe it's the food prep. Maybe I need to put that in smaller chunks. Maybe I need to do smaller batches of it so I don't find it so overwhelming. If it's the cleaning or the decluttering, like, and some people can put it off for a long period of time, it's because we expect ourselves to go into a room and do 3 or 4 hours, maybe a whole day. And it's, I don't have that much time. And so our expectation of what we need to commit to that is too large. And so it puts us off. So we want to get to this place where we have the self-discipline to rock up and do the work, where we're able to stick with those non-negotiable habits throughout the week. And then we get to where this place where we do have improved self-belief. We are talking positively to ourselves and we're able to create an environment where we feel like our partner's on board, our children are part of the routine, where everybody is on the same page. Our colleagues, everyone is able to have a supportive environment and structures to which everyone is on the same page. But what you have to remember is if you've been living a certain way as a family unit for 10 years, you can't suddenly think, or you've been in a relationship with someone for 10 years, 15 years, and then you suddenly want to lead this new lifestyle and you're all inspired about it. And you've got these big grand ideas about how you want it to run. And this is what I want to implement. And then you're trying to put it into place with your partner, and your partner's, I liked what we were doing. I didn't think it was a problem. You've got to understand you're going to get a heap of resistance and it takes time before they can come on board. Now, Katie is a prime example. So I literally was talking to Katie about this morning, right? So Katie has done acceleration, momentum. She loves momentum so much. She's just joined up to momentum again. She's missed the group calls and the teams dearly. So she's just signed up again. And she was telling me this morning that she's been on this journey with her husband, Matt, for a year and a half. And he is now at a point where he does personal development. He exercises every morning. He is eating all the foods that she is. He is so on board because she's been so consistent and sticking at it that he sees that now that this is a lifestyle that she wants to lead. Katie's lost kilos. And so now she can see the value. He can see the value that this is what we're doing as a family unit and is going to stick at it. But don't expect your partner and the kids are just going to suddenly jump on board. It takes time. Give it time. So the habits that we focus on in Inspired Mama are these 11 here. And when you first come into the program, you're like, oh my God, there's a lot. Oh my God, that woman has put so many habits onto their tracker. How am I possibly ever going to get to a point where I'm consistent with all of them? And so what I want you to understand, there's core habits which we focus on at the beginning, as you all know, which are the ones that we need to have as our fundamentals. And then what we do is we build up over a period of time. And as we get better with our routine and we compound more and we habit stack more with our morning routine and our evening routine, then gradually what happens is eventually you build it up to be this incredible beast, which runs on its own, which runs on automation, helps you manage your mental and physical health. And you feel like it's just who you are. You want it to be an identity shift. That's what creates a healthy lifestyle. And so we've got to build that slowly. That doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a long period of time. So be kind to yourself and empathetic when you're going through those changes. So the core non-negotiable habits that you really have to get on top of and you have to master. The first one is our nutrition. Nutrition is one of those things. There are so many things that go into our nutrition before we even eat. There's like the meal planning, which is what am I actually going to eat? What does the whole family eat? What are the cuisines that I like to eat? What do I like to snack on? Do I need variety with my dinners or do I need variety with my snacks? What can I do repetitively with my breakfast or maybe repeat with my lunches so I don't get bored? There's a lot of considerations that go into someone's nutrition. If someone's emotionally eating or binge eating or eating off constantly on the fly, it comes down to disorganization or they're bored with their food or there's other factors at play, right? So you really got to think about what are the foods that I really enjoy eating and how can I plan for that? Then you've got to make sure, of course, you do the meal plan. You got to get this food shop. You got to get it into the house. You got to prepare it all and then you get to eat it. And eating is like a 15-minute event out of a reasonably large commitment. The next one that makes women feel really good, but it's not a key fundamental habit, is exercise. When women exercise, they just feel good about themselves. They release their stress. They're in a great mental space. They feel really proud of themselves. They feel like they're accomplishing so much. It's like your ego is happy because you're like, I'm doing this. I can actually do this. And you feel really good about yourself. So there's a lot of positive benefits that come from exercise. But the challenge with exercise is that when you're really snowed under and you feel like you've got lack of time and you feel like you've pulled in different directions and everybody needs you, it's one of the first habits that goes. So what causes that habit to slide? Our stress. Women's exercise slides, their nutrition slides, and the whole thing gets wiped off the table when their stress is too high. So that means that as fundamental as a core habit, our stress management has to be at the top. If you can have a morning routine and an evening routine where you can find pockets for yourself through either meditation, this journaling, or this brain dumping that we do, entering the stress-free zone throughout the day, these 3 habits that we're talking about all the time in momentum and acceleration, if you can find pockets of that and manage your mental space, you'll find that your ability to commit and eat the nutrition and prepare the food and actually follow the plan is so much greater. And your ability to show up for the workouts actually happens. So the stress management component as a core habit has to be one that sits up quite high. Know that we will slowly stack all of these things and bring them in to where you get to a point where you are doing most of these pretty things pretty much on a daily basis. Obviously, you're not meal planning or grocery shopping or doing preparation every day. The 9, 10, and 11 are not repetitive on a daily basis. But the other top 8 there, from active living through to love, they're ones that you do want to get to a point, ideally, where you're doing them 4 times, 5 times a week. And why do we want to do that? Because we want to feel grounded. We want to feel mentally in control. We want to feel like when the storm hits and life is really hectic, and we feel like we're being swept away, that we can pull ourselves back together. That we're not going to crumble in a heap and we're not going to lay under the dunas and we're not going to pull it over the top of our head and tell us that we're not coming out. And that's what those mental wellness practices or those fundamental core habits of nutrition, moving our body, and managing your stress do. They help us ground again and bring and active living doesn't have to be a strength session. Active living can be going for a walk. It can be doing yoga. It can be moving your body. It can be walking laps on the lawn with your shoes off because it helps you feel grounded. It's whatever calms your mental space. And so it's really important that you don't associate exercise only with strength training or only with attending a gym class or only with sweating, because it's not true. When we're in that place and we feel grounded and we feel like we're mentally in control, we're able to identify and prioritize what activities or habits are going to bring us joy. And we also are able to prioritize our time. We don't get sucked into that void that we go into, which is procrastination of doom scrolling, watching too much Netflix, sitting down at night and avoiding people, diving into our room and being alone, doing all those other things which don't bring us stress relief and don't bring us that work-life balance. They actually add more stress to the plate. So how do we do it? There are 5 things that you need to do in order to be able to boost your self-assurance and your perseverance. Thing is, you have to celebrate your small wins. Now, I'm always talking about this in the journaling thing. The problem is not many people sit down and actually write what they're doing really well. So many women are so busy picking themselves apart and telling themselves that they're not meeting the bar that it puts them off putting more effort. And just as we would never say to our children, oh, that's good enough, it's not good enough. You can't read that. You're never going to read. There's no point in bothering. This is never going to work for you. You're not getting this. You can't believe you can't read that 4-letter word. Like, you would never do that because you know that would push your child into the ground. It would demotivate them and they would never take any action. But we do that to ourselves. So we think we're not doing enough. It's this is never enough. I'm not good enough. I could have done that better. We slam ourselves. Now, I used to lay in bed at night and I used to berate myself on, oh God, I should have eaten less of this. Should have exercised more there. What's wrong with you? Why don't you have any self-control around food? Why do you continue to binge eat? All you do is buy chocolate and blah, blah, blah. All you need to do is drink alcohol. I was just constantly laying in bed and berating myself. Do you think that motivated me the next day to wake up and make change? I thought it would, as in I thought if I could just berate myself enough, then I'd feel bad enough. Hopefully tomorrow I make a better decision. But the problem is what happens is we wake up the next day and we repeat the cycle because berating ourselves doesn't improve our behavior. Okay, we think that we sucked. Sure. But what are you going to do about it? What things are you doing well and what can you continue to work on and improve? That's not what you need to focus. So you need to celebrate your small wins and your progress along the way. It's really important that you're acknowledging the progress that you're making. That's really important because it compounds small amounts over time, not in large chunks. You're not just going to wake up one day and be an exercise guru and have your nutrition on track 100%, because everybody is continuing to fight that battle every week, team. The next thing is we need to reframe our setbacks as opportunities for growth or learning. If you have a setback and you feel like you have let yourself down, think, okay, what didn't work? What could I do differently next time? How could I change my approach? And I'm always talking about this in acceleration and momentum, but this reflect, learn, grow. If you can reflect, learn, grow consistently, you will always improve. The next thing is you need to practice positive self-talk. And when you start to feel yourself spiraling, what is an affirmation that you could say to yourself that pulls yourself out of it? So like I was talking earlier about when things got overwhelming and I feel like I've got too much on my plate, I was like, I'm drowning, I can't cope with this. And that's not truth. And so you've got to have something that you turn to when your dialogue is spiraling. You have to say something like, oh, I always get everything done. I always make the time. I always get everything done. Whatever calms your mental state. So it's really important you identify, okay, what are the things that I say to myself? How does that make me feel? But also, is that a truth? Probably not. Am I catastrophizing? Absolutely. What could I say instead? It's going to make me feel better. And then the last one there is to step outside of your comfort zone. And no, that is what you're doing now. You are stepping outside of your comfort zone. You're recreating your life and your health. And it doesn't come easily. You've got to keep showing up. It's the only way. So how do we make long-term changes? Now, there's 5 points of what you need to do to create these habits and then make them work for you. This is referred to as the compound effect. Step 1 is we need to start with one habit at a time, and we need to build a sustainable routine around that habit. The second thing we need to do is we need to schedule habits during optimal times. There's no point, like I said earlier, in putting your exercise at 7:30 at night when you're meant to be getting the kids to bed, you're fatigued, and the odds of you rocking it up are really slim. The third thing you need to do is you need to schedule it. Use prompts, use calendars, use your reminders, use an accountability partner. You've obviously got me as your coach. You've also got the beautiful community and Inspired Mama. Use those to your advantage. We need to have a plan as to where we're going to actually fit this stuff in so that when we're looking at the plan, we're realistic to how much we can expect from ourselves from day to day. That's why I get you guys to do a Google Calendar. The fourth thing is they need to be enjoyable, and they need to factor in obviously your work, your life, and your health balance. We've got to work out how can we balance all of this stuff out. And that's why we're putting it into the calendar. And the fun thing is you need to track your progress, which is exactly what we're doing with the wonderful habit trackers that we use, either in the app or within the custom trackers that we use within Momentum. So team, it's just 2 slides that I want to show you. This one here. So our habits are compound interest of self-improvement. And the small habits like your hydration or the journaling or your stress management or the self-love activities, they don't seem like much on any given day. But over the months and the years, their effects can accumulate to an incredible degree. And just like when we compound money and we see it exponentially grow, the same thing happens with your habits. You get better and better at it. But you have to create a routine to which you can fit these things. And these habits have to be placed in the best location in order for you to be working with you, not against you, which is what that table we were just working on before allows you to implement things that are working with your style and how your life flows. Now, if there's certain habits that you're struggling with, I've created this table. As inside the app, we have a huge amount of infinite potential courses. But when you look inside there and there's 150 hours worth of training, people don't necessarily know what section they need to be diving into and what they need to be listening to in order to be able to move up the levels. So when you first come into the program, you're at this stage where you're creating habits. So what we've got down here is it's talking about the first stage is that you need to do a pantry cleanse and you need to understand the products that you've got in your house and what you could swap it out for. And then you need to move on to reading nutritional tables. Then the next step is overcoming emotional eating. And there's a training on that in there. Then the next one is like your nutritional advice and meal planning. So the 4 pillars in acceleration are managing your nutrition, getting to a point in which you move your body consistently, being able to keep yourself accountable with your time management, brain dumping, reminders, that sort of thing. And then the final one is mastering your mindset. So being this place where you have trust and you have faith in yourself, you have determination and grit to do the work, and you're able to show up for it. So in the document that you've downloaded or that I've shared through there, this is the level to which you move up it. When you're creating habits, you'll listen to these trainings. Then when you want to consolidate those habits, you're going to move on to food diary guidance training, how to avoid weight gain on vacation, and feeding fussy eaters. Then when you're consistent with your nutrition habits, you'll then move into these trainings. Your family meal plan design, how to improve your gut health, overall health, and mental health, and then letting food be your medicine. So if there's a particular area in which you feel that you need work and one of the habits that you mentioned fall into that category, So it might be, okay, I'm struggling with the mindset side of things. I lack self-confidence. I'm struggling to be consistent. I can have negative internal dialogue. I need to get better at supporting myself, knowing that I can do the work. Then what you would do is you would come down the bottom here and you would listen to these trainings in this order from the bottom, and then you would move up. But it's not just about listening to a training, is it? We know that you have to listen to the training and you have to implement what you learn. There's no point in listening about journaling and listening about self-love and listening about these changes that you make if you don't implement any of it. Listening means nothing. Implementation is actually where the results come in. So the idea is that if you're in this stage where you're creating habits, you listen and you implement, and then you move to the next stage. Listen and then you implement. And so they're grouped. Now, if you go into the infinite potential section of the app and you click on the nutrition tab, you know how there's the search bar on the right-hand side and you click the 3 lines and the search bar pops up. If you click on the nutrition tab, only these trainings show. If you click on active living, only these trainings show. Accountability, same, and mindset. So they've been organized into course content. So you can go in there and you can listen to that training, listen, implement that. And if you're having struggles with implementing that one habit, then that comes back to what we were working on before. Because what I'm talking about in those trainings is implementing these habits, isn't it? You have to say, okay, am I scheduling that habit at the most optimal time? And am I providing the most optimal environment? Am I using reminders, scheduling software, and accountability partners to make sure I do the work? What can I do to make that habit more enjoyable? And how can I track that I'm actually doing it and adjust my routine? If I continually miss it, I need to go back up here. The scheduling of the habit is not working and I need to move back up here.